Welcome to Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Stranger Sports Map Houston. That's Joel Bleak. And catch him noon to 3 on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 FM. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, do that right now. Click like on the video. We do appreciate all the support. Hey, Joel, welcome in. With all the headlines and the news over the past couple of weeks, one of the stories has flown under the radar on this channel, and that's the Hall of Fame snub of Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. And it's not because those two guys weren't dominant in their era, and it's not because they don't have the stats, but it's because of their association with steroids. And it makes me think about our hometown Astros, because one guy on that roster, and Jose Altuve, is on a trajectory that would make you think that he's headed towards the Hall of Fame, but his association with the sign-stealing scandal in 2017 puts that in question. Seeing snubs of best players of all time in Clemens and Bonds, you're seeing them not make the Hall of Fame. How does that bode for Jose Altuve?
Well, right now, not good, Brandon, but I think that's good because now we've got some time, because the whole thing needs to be retooled and redone. When you think about the gray-haired, blue-blooded voters and the fact that they're so biased because they're so old school and they can't accept everything from Ken Griffey Jr. wearing his hat backwards to everything you alluded to with the steroid scandal and beyond, there has to be a kind of a revisiting of who gets to vote, and how the votes are tabulated in terms of the criteria, and set some clear criteria and standards as well. Because when you look at it, as you mentioned, Bonds was a Hall of Famer well before he even touched the clear for the first time. When you talk about his 400 home runs and 1,400 RBIs and the multiple MVPs and the things he had done. Clemens the same way, the way he was dominant for a long period of time. They may have used it more towards longevity because they were doing things later in their career that not a lot of other people were capable of doing. But the first part of their career was so dominant, they were Hall of Famers no matter what. When you look at Altuve, they haven't even proved what was just a big social media phenomenon thanks to John Boy with the buzzer. But the fact that they, even with the reports that came out, most people said he was more likely to stay away from it than he was to participate in it. But everybody gets roped into one lump team sum in the fact of the Astros. I think the voting has to change. I think they have to get more forward thinking, and I hate to say it, but younger voters that are more in tune with today's baseball. And like back then, they saved the game of baseball in a lot of ways during the steroid era, between McGuire and Sosa and the guys you mentioned. So I think that a lot of things have to be kind of redone if you're the Hall of Fame to kind of get with the time.
I want to talk about that nuance. But before we get into that, give us a word from Fitz Roofing.
We love the people at Fitz Roofing. They're dedicated to the people of Houston. They do it in so many ways. They do roofing and roof repairs for your home or your business. They also do home repairs and fences for your yard. It's as simple as one call, 832-521-3001. It's a free, no obligation inspection. They come to you to tell you what they can do, and it costs you absolutely nothing. If you want them to do the work, you're getting the best in the business. It's Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
Joel, back several months ago, after the White Sox series with the Astros, John and Lance had White Sox Dave on their show. And one of the interesting things that White Sox Dave said was that in going back and forth and doing some friendly trash talking with Astros fans, it was brought to his attention that Altuve did not, in fact, use the system. He had never heard that. And here's a guy who's super into baseball, and he follows, lives, breathes, and eats baseball. And yet he didn't know that the reports, every report that's come out subsequent to the accusations have basically exonerated Altuve of sign stealing or participating in the sign stealing. So I wonder, is nuance going to be the difference in whether someone like Altuve gets in?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, Brandon, is how many of the voters are going to do the due diligence and research enough to find out the misnomers that are out there. The fact that a social media guy like John Boy can set a false narrative that suddenly becomes the known truth that has to be proven wrong. In the case of a guy that's been constantly and consistently getting 200 hits a season, being an all-star and a silver slugger and doing all the things that Altuve has done for a good body of work over a long period of time, so that you can't just point to one incident or try and frame him on one set of circumstances, regardless if he did it or not, and he didn't do it. I think that's why it's unfortunate that you almost have to have your own public relations department to kind of clear the smear campaign, and then you also have to make sure that you set the record straight in terms of the stats, the longevity, and all the accomplishments. It's a tough sell because a lot of players don't feel like they have to sell themselves, nor do they want to. But maybe it's just the teams themselves and their PR departments too getting involved, going, wait, time out. Here's the facts. Here are the misnomers. Here's what you need to know. I was involved in it, Brandon, because Rudy Tomjanovich couldn't get in the Hall of Fame forever and a day. And there was a handful of us that took different angles to put together different presentations and different packets of information to get to voting groups so that they were more aware of all the accomplishments and more basically on the map and on the radar than Rudy might have been otherwise, because we felt it was such a tragedy that he wasn't in.
Well, and to be fair, there is a big difference in the Basketball Hall of Fame and Baseball Hall of Fame, because basketball seems to be a little bit more inclusive, whereas MLB, they look for any reason, and they're notorious for not allowing people to be voted in on their first ballot. So I do wonder how much that plays into it. You talked about the possibility of maybe fixing the system. We know what the system is right now. We know, how many years guys are eligible to be on the ballot. And so we've seen guys who are worthy fall off the ballot and no longer be eligible to be voted in. How does baseball retroactively fix this problem?
Well, some of the ex-players have come up with a solution that I kind of like, Brandon, at least to start it, and that is guys with 10-plus years of service have a say-so with the Veterans Committee. And you start polling guys that have been in the game long enough to realize who were cheaters, who were the real deal, and how they played the game and went about their business, and get the Veterans Committee. If you don't get in through the voters from the media and the Baseball Writers Association, you have that second chance that Bonds and Clemens and others are going to have. And if you get the true people that played the game, that understand the abilities and the talents and the skill sets that guys like Bonds and Clemens had, there is that opportunity that regardless if the media made their point and made you wait or not, if your statistics and your ability on the field was proven to be Hall of Fame worthy amongst your peers at the time, then you should be able to get in, and you should get in quickly, and you should be able to put it all to bed, because I like something like that. I'm tired of seeing these longtime voters that turn in a ballot without one guy's name circled to make a stance or to make a point, or they're constantly showing their ballot and showing that they picked guys that weren't Hall of Fame worthy because they were going to take a stand and not pick the guys that they didn't like because of what they perceived to be a negative on their resume. I'm tired of all of that. It's about what they did between the lines, how they played the games, and sure, to some extent, how they carried themselves, but there has to be a better way.
All right, Joel, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think if Jose Altuve stays on his current trajectory that he will be in the Hall of Fame?
I do. I really do. I think that, again, we might not see him on a first ballot, but we are going to see, hopefully, that when everybody is able to just step back. And I also think, Brandon, a lot of this is contingent on there's going to be a lot of players and people that were in the know coming out in the next 5 to 10 years to talk about how many other teams made sure the Astros weren't alone in doing what they were doing. It's just that they had too much to lose right now and they're not talking. But I think that's going to help. I think possibly, the perception and the viewpoints of the people that have votes going forward can change and help. But I think when you step back and look at the body of work that he put forth, especially with the limitations on his size, I really believe that he is going to be much like a Calvin Murphy. His stats are going to speak for themselves. And then when you factor in that he was smaller than most, he's going to get more love at the end of the day. And I do believe he will get in.